Thank you guys very much for coming. So I just wanted to start. For those who don't know who I am, my name is JD McCormick. I started the American Healthy Alternatives Association with the goal of saving hemp and what I call free market cannabis in the United States about 4 years ago. We started the Florida Healthy Alternatives Association because I had opened a retail store in Tallahassee, Florida, right near the state capitol. And I originally started selling vapes, right? E-cigarettes, flavored vapes to get people to quit smoking. Well, circa 2020 and 2021, I started selling more hemp products. I realized it's not just about CBD. Delta 8 was coming on the market, Delta 9 gummies. I started recognizing that, wait a second, the 2018 Farm Bill actually meant free market cannabis. No more vertical integration, no more Trulieve mergering and acquisitioning their way to the top of the heap unnecessarily and done so through lobbying and laws. I realized that a free market was actually possible for the first time in cannabis history. I said, okay, we're going to start this association, we're going to fight for it and see what happens. Shortly thereafter, a friend of mine from Tennessee called me and said, we've got this bad bill, this bad piece of legislation. What do we do about it? How do we form an association? How do we get lobbyists? How do we go to the Capitol and have our voices heard? So we started the Tennessee Healthy Alternatives Association. Shortly after that, Georgia called, then North Carolina, then Virginia, then Maryland, then Utah, and now we've operated in, I think, up to 25 states. We have state associations in about a dozen. So I'm going to go through and work through most of the major hotspot states that I see developing as we speak. And from there, I'll open it up to questions and answers toward the end and see if we can't get to some of your concerns. So, calendar year 2024, in Florida, we had one of the hardest legislative fights I've ever been a part of anywhere in the United States. Trulieve, what we estimate, they spent many millions of dollars to not only kill the hemp industry in Florida, but to then push Amendment 3, recreational cannabis, that would have only advantaged them and other large cannabis corporations. We recognized this midway through session that, and I'll tell you from my personal experience, in working in Florida politics for going on 8 years now, I felt something change. I felt like a powerful opposition that I hadn't normally felt. I said, wait a second, my conversations and my talking points just aren't landing. What's happening? Towards the end of session, we recognized that we were likely going to lose and that bill to kill the hemp industry was going to pass. I said, oh crap, we've got a big problem on our hands. Luckily for us, we have one of the best governors in the United States, in my humble opinion. We went to Governor DeSantis and his staff and argued that the hemp industry was the small business answer to a big cannabis problem, right? We represented the small businesses that had just $50,000, $100,000 to start, and now they're feeding their families. Now they've got a dozen employees. Now they're living the American dream, and large corporate cannabis companies were just trying to take it away from them. We did a full bill analysis to show where it advantaged them in killing us, and how killing us would just lead to more black market activity, more arrests, more shipments coming in direct to consumers online. Governor DeSantis luckily listened to us. He vetoed that bill, and post-veto, I recognized that Trulieve was likely the #1 enemy of the hemp industry in Florida. I said, we got to stand up and we got to fight these people. If Amendment 3 passes, they're going to consolidate power, they're going to have a ton of liquid capital, and they're going to come after us. We said, we got to fight these folks. So this year, calendar year 2025, as of yesterday, a good pro-small business hemp bill was filed by one of our favorite legislators who stood up for us last year. Representative Hillary Cassell filed HB 601, and we are ready, willing and able to support her in that fight. Moving on to Georgia. So last year in Georgia, we founded the Georgia Alliance, a group meant to advocate for hemp, nicotine, and kratom, all inside one association. In forming the Georgia Alliance, we worked incredibly hard on a bill that was designed to ban all hemp products, just like we saw in Florida. And the two were moving at similar times. We said, oh crap, this is going to be a 1-2 punch. Not only are we going to lose Florida, we're going to lose Georgia. So we stood up and we fought as hard as we possibly could, raised quite a bit of money, and went to the Georgia Capitol. I actively advocated with some of the senators and representatives. And one guy actually stood out in the bunch, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. Burt Jones sat down with us and had a pretty common sense conversation with us about what this would mean for Georgia. And we were able to kind of show him what was happening in Florida, how large cannabis corporations are just looking to crush their small business competition and then build up their infrastructure in his state. So luckily, again, they stood in the breach for small businesses. Now the bill that ended up passing in Georgia, although it did limit flower sales in the state, Delta 9, Delta 8, edibles, vapes, all of those things are still legal. And they've put in some really common sense restrictions, labeling restrictions, gummies, gummy restrictions, tincture restrictions, et cetera. Some consumer protection things. So really, really feeling good about that. Now in Tennessee, I think probably one of my favorite pieces of legislation in the entire United States is the bill that passed in calendar year 2023 to legalize hemp and THCA in the state of Tennessee. For the last year and a half, Tennessee has become what I would argue is the most forward-thinking cannabis law in the United States. It allows small business participation, horizontal sales. Retailers can now sell THCA flower, hemp flower, cannabis flower, federally legal cannabis flower, and they don't have to do it in the shadows. It's not behind the counter or under some shelf somewhere. It is in jars and labeled products up and down the shelves in all of these retail stores. It has created probably the most vibrant cannabis industry in the United States, I would argue. This year, what we anticipate, we've already got 5 bills we're tracking in Tennessee, the worst of which is going to be a THCA flower ban. So far, in the last 9 days, we've raised $350,000 in Tennessee, and we're going to bring the fight to the Tennessee legislature. We anticipate that large alcohol corporations are going to want to move all hemp regulations over to the 3-tiered system. Now, I think most of us would agree that beverages, it makes sense, they've got the infrastructure. Beverages going to 3-tier, not the end of the world, right? But I think what us as advocates, what we need to think about, well, if they take all of the regulation into the 3-tiered system, do we think big alcohol is going to be confident enough to sell flower? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. And so we have to be realistic about what that means, right? Big alcohol and the alcohol regulatory bodies taking control of all hemp might be negative for flower sales. They might prioritize gummies. They might deprioritize vapes. It might be a huge problem for all of us. So in Tennessee, we're going to fight. We've already raised significant funds. Obviously, we've identified the several bills that are going to hurt us the most. But right now, we're actively bringing together every advocacy group, every leader, every big company we can find in Tennessee to put together a really good campaign there to defend it. Now in North Carolina, for the last 3 years, our North Carolina Healthy Alternatives Association has been one of our best organized, one of our best run state chapters in the nation. We've been working on a bill, HB 563, in North Carolina for, God, what's it been, 2 years. We got it really, really close to the finish line in 2024 in the summer. And at the very last minute, a senator attached medical marijuana to our hemp bill. Now, attaching medical marijuana to hemp may seem like these are symbiotic or generally agreeable positions, right? But in attaching medical marijuana that had the legislature, in a tizzy, we'll call it, actually tanked the bill. It was attaching something that had become politically non-viable in North Carolina. Now hemp and small business made a lot of sense for the legislature. But once you attach large corporate cannabis, medical marijuana, the bill died. And so we're hopeful that we can bring that bill back. Again, another rehashing of probably some of the most forward-thinking cannabis legislation in the nation. And if we can get that passed in North Carolina this year, I think North Carolina is going to be probably one of the best states in the nation to operate a hemp company. South Carolina. South Carolina, over the last several years, has made great strides. The South Carolina Healthy Alternatives Association has filed a regulatory bill, common sense, really a positive move in the right direction, I think. But just about a week and a half ago, a ban bill was filed. So to now kind of coincide with our good regulatory bill, there's a ban bill moving at the same time. So last week, and earlier this week even, our state chapter president and a lot of our board members and members came together at the South Carolina Capitol and went and advocated in a committee. So we're really, really hopeful for South Carolina. They've got a ban bill, but anybody that does business there, please pay attention, reach out to the folks in South Carolina. Now Kentucky, this is a unique case Kentucky, I think, was trying to do the right thing, and with the governor's direction, obviously they regulated hemp and Delta 8. They also passed a marijuana bill, but slipped through in the dark of night is a nicotine registry bill. And that nicotine registry bill has language that bans all vapes, not just nicotine vapes, it bans all vapes. And so now I've got vape retailers and hemp retailers in Kentucky who are saying, wait a second, we just legalized this, we just regulated it, it's all positive, it should all be good, but now they're saying our vapes are illegal, right? And so the gentleman sitting right here in the second row, a great friend of mine, Greg Troutman, we're gonna be working together to come up with some nuanced legal theories to figure out a way to separate and parse out the hemp vapes from the nicotine vapes. We're gonna be working very hard to set up an association there and working with some legislators to pass some good legislation that can actually change the status quo and keep that positive momentum that we've got there in Kentucky. Now, Nebraska. Nebraska has been a really hard-fought state for the last couple of years. It's through a lot of hard work. We've developed a lot of relationships in Nebraska. We've developed a board, the Nebraska Healthy Alternatives Association. We've come to find that the Attorney General in the state of Nebraska is not our friend. He does not like hemp, he does not like cannabis, he doesn't like anything to do with it. So the Attorney General, about a year and a half ago, filed a series of consumer complaints, trademark infringement, lawsuits, et cetera, against a bunch of retailers and suppliers. Some of those folks have settled those cases, others are still fighting them. But we're hopeful that in Nebraska this year we can get a good regulatory bill passed. Now, Ohio. Ohio's a really big deal because we just got a huge win. And I want to say thank you to another gentleman sitting up in the front row here. Ohio has been a hard-fought state. We've raised a lot of money there. But issue being, although we killed a ban bill just 2 months ago in December, they have brought that bill right back. And so Ohio is going to be another hard-fought state. Luckily for us, we have done a really good job organizing some of the grassroots. We've got a couple hundred members that have donated to Ohio. And it looks like we may be able to strike a balance between the dispensaries and the recreational marijuana industry's interests and the hemp industry's interests there. So we're going to be working really, really hard in Ohio. Illinois. So Illinois, back in May, June of 2024, we killed a ban bill. We worked incredibly hard. We brought together every stakeholder we could find, every group we could find, and we killed the bill in the final hour, literally the last day, in the last 2 hours of session. I was up until midnight tracking the bill, calling our lobby team, calling our PR team, and we killed it. Illinois has a unique period of time. They call it veto session. It's a few days right before the start of the next session when they address any bills that had not passed, any initiatives that had not passed, or anything that the governor had vetoed to see if they can get a majority vote to overturn the veto. In veto session, Governor J.B. Pritzker made hemp, small business hemp, his top priority. He wanted to kill the entire hemp industry, and of course they just got a report back, I think it was a few days ago, that showed the recreational marijuana industry did $2.1 billion in sales. So go figure, the multi-billion-dollar marijuana industry wants to get rid of all their small business competition to inflate those numbers even higher. So we worked really, really hard that first week of January, just about 60 days ago, and killed that ban bill, thank God. But it's coming back. Now, one of the most inspiring things I've seen from all around the United States, we were able to bring together every major hemp association, the Illinois Black Hemp Association, the Illinois Hemp Business Association, the Illinois Hemp Growers Association, a consumption association. Every group that had an interest in hemp came together and signed one letter, one memorandum of understanding. We're all working together, we're all small businesses, and we all believe we deserve a chance to exist. So although our ideas might be different, our goal of saving the hemp industry and saving free market cannabis is the same. Now, New Jersey. New Jersey had a ban bill, a hemp ban bill, pass over the summer. I think it was June. In July, we worked incredibly hard to bring together every major stakeholder in the state to file a federal lawsuit to stop the enforcement of this bill, and we were successful. Thank God we were successful. That lawsuit stopped the enforcement, and the one provision we didn't challenge, and I think we all agree, we did not challenge the bill's ability to regulate sales to anyone under the age of 21. That's the one provision we didn't challenge. We told the AG's office and the governor's office we would not challenge that. The judge agreed with us that there were some provisions in the law that needed to be reworked. Interstate commerce, was a big problem in that bill. So our federal lawsuit was successful. We got the injunction we needed. And now I've had conversations with the Attorney General's office, the governor's office, Senate leadership, House leadership, and they want to promote a pro-small business hemp bill in New Jersey. So we're gonna be working over the next 3 months to see if we can't get something passed. Now, on to our next section, and then I wanted to open it up to Q&A, questions and answers. But our future initiatives. One of the things I've noticed in doing this for the last 4 years is it is incredibly hard to get retailers engaged. But when we get them engaged, that's our superpower. That's the one thing that large cannabis corporations don't have, is access to the people and the truth to back it up, right? In Georgia last year, in working with a couple of large retailers, Cloud9, Cali Culture, and a couple others, we broke the record for the most number of emails sent to the legislature. We sent 115,000 emails to the House and the Senate in a 2-week period of time. Because when we engage our consumers, the consumers in our industry will fight for this vehemently, vigorously. So I think getting more retailer support, getting more engagement from them, and figuring out ideas and ways to engage directly with the consumers through our retail partners. That's something we really got to work on as an industry. One of the things I've been inspired by and really I think is something we need to lean into is getting people to consistently donate monthly, right? One of these states, let's take South Carolina for instance. South Carolina right now has decent funding. They always need a little bit more help, but if I called every one of our members, every one of our donors from all around the United States and said, hey, we need to raise $500,000 in this state, I think a lot of people would step up. What we need is $50,000 a month instead of $500,000 all at once a year. Because budgeting and allocating money every month is much better, much more efficient in the political process. If we say, hey, we're this big industry, hey, we've got all this money, hey, we've got all these consumers, but we don't have any money until the rubber hits the pavement and the ban bill presents itself, well then we can't go out and advocate for ourselves the rest of the year. So we look like we're blowing a bit of smoke. And then, again, when ban bills are presented, obviously we fight back, but we need to be better about raising money and raising awareness for the political process every month, right? But we've gotten one in Ohio. We have now raised $75,000 a month in monthly contributions to our Ohio State chapter. And seeing that work product and seeing those guys really stand up and put that together and organize that was one of the most inspiring things I've seen from all around the country. So I think consistent monthly contributions, getting engagement at the retail level and consumer level is definitely the things we're going to be moving towards and working on in the future. I think looking forward, we need to be considerate of what legislators want from us. What do they want? They want these products to be properly marketed. They want them not to be sold to folks under the age of 21. They want testing standards and safety standards. And if we can all be in agreement there, and we can, work together to advocate for those inside the industry, that's going to help all of us. So I know I'm only 18 minutes in to what should be an hour-long thing, but I want to open it up to Q&A and see what questions are out there and see if we can help some folks out. John?
Yeah, I'll go first. You rattled off a variety of states there, some of which have established marijuana industries, some of which don't. I'm from Arizona and obviously deal a lot with the established marijuana industry there in our advocacy efforts. Could you talk a little bit about just how it differs in states without an industry as opposed to how it functions in one that has one? Curious if you hear similar arguments from legislators in both kinds of states, both buckets, so to speak, or if there are certain arguments that pop up that are being kind of seeded by the opposition that exists in certain states and doesn't pop up elsewhere.
So I'll tell you what, the hardest fight last year was in Florida. It is no coincidence that simultaneously Trulieve was spending $150 million to to pass recreational cannabis. In states where large corporate interests from cannabis don't exist, the fights are easy. And I say easy, it's all relative, right? But it's much easier in those states because we don't have the narratives and the spin doctoring from an opposition team that has millions of dollars against us. In states with considerable marijuana interests, Ohio, Missouri, of course Arizona, Florida, in some of those states, the fights are incredibly difficult and they cost way more money, time and effort and engagement. But in states like Tennessee, back in 2023, there was no entrenched interest on the other side. And so we passed one of the best cannabis bills in the nation. So the talking points, I think, often are the same. Children, testing standards, heavy metals, pesticides, what are you getting, where is it coming from? I find it interesting that cannabis is the most tested consumer product in the United States because of the supply chain, right? The farmer has to show the value from the crop. Then the manufacturer, the distributor, and the extractor all want to show different test results for the value of the product. And then the end retailer has a QR code on a package that their consumer scans. We did an economic impact report in Colorado. We did a comparative analysis between marijuana products and hemp products and found that on average, hemp products are tested 3.7 times before it reaches a consumer, and the marijuana products are tested twice before it reaches a consumer. So I think the arguments from large cannabis interests, and especially in entrenched states, are very similar. It's usually the same playbook. They usually have, the USCC or some of these other large groups that all kind of coordinate and organize some of those talking points. But in states where they're not, the fight's a little bit easier. So, yeah, that was a great question.
It's similar arguments, but just more fine-tuned where there's a cannabis industry and more amplified, but they tend to focus on similar subjects.
Big time. And now in some other states like Texas, there are just legitimate ideologues, teetotalers, people that don't believe we should have access to cannabis at all, that are against us, right? And so sometimes there's opposition from corporate interests, and other times there really are just ideological, ideologues at the top that want to see it gone. So I think there's a kind of a blending of the two. And in Tennessee, actually for the first time, this is the first time I've seen this, the THCA flower ban bill has 18 bill sponsors, including the Speaker of the House. It's a big deal. This is going to be a big fight. So I know for a fact that there's no marijuana interest there, of course, but we definitely know that there are some ideological differences. I was driving through Tennessee about a month ago, and I took note from Chattanooga to Nashville and from Nashville to Knoxville on every major highway. There were a dozen or more giant billboards that said cannabis, hemp, come get the flower, or whatever it is. So I think sometimes we're our own worst enemies, right, with our marketing. But I think, again, the marijuana interests, especially the entrenched corporate interests and their money, makes a big difference in how hard the fights are. Anybody else? What do you got?
So I'm a broker in Louisiana, and I've lived through the worst nightmare. I think we're probably the worst state,
Mm-hmm.
like in the whole United States.
You in Utah, as far as the regulations are concerned.
Yeah, so we've got, of course, that same playbook going on with the big cannabis attacking the hemp, and they just, brought it down to like nothing. They got rid of all the flower, they got rid of all the vapes.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is going to happen is if you zoom out, Trump is taking down all of these organizations. I think we're going to see something different. We're pivoting in a big way because it's just a hot mess, when you look at it for what's happening state to state and like the compliance for the companies that have to comply with each of these. It's just a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
So what do you see happening with that so that it can all be uniform so that you don't have all these other organizations trying to reinterpret the Supreme Court ruling of the hemp bill?
Sure.
Essentially, all of these products are compliant with the Farm Bill.
So you've got a complicated policy problem. The Republicans and conservatives et al. Support states' rights, right? They believe that the Constitution says these United States. Each state has sovereignty and its own ability to create laws. Donald Trump, in his pro-Amendment 3 True Social post, even recognized this. He said it should be federally legal. We should see it legal. He was not opposed to the legalization. but it is a state's right or a state's decision to do medical or recreational and how they fight those battles. The reason I started this organization and grew it to so many states is I believe the states are where the hardest fights are. I think DC, you know, it's funny, I was talking to a great political mentor of mine in DC, and she said, state legislation shows up on your annual and quarterly earnings reports. DC legislation is how you forecast your company for the next 5 and 10 years. That resonated with me, and it makes a lot of sense because the Farm Bill only has to get rehashed every 5 years. So as long as we are strong in DC and we protect, you know, the broad legality, the fight is going to be at the state level. And that's why I think organizing at the state level, starting state associations, building boards, getting all these members is the most important thing we can be doing, right? There's 30, 40 hemp lobbyists in DC, there's 100 cannabis lobbyists in DC, and there's 1,000 pharma and 1,000 alcohol lobbyists, right? The entrenched power in DC is designed to prevent catastrophic change, right? It was once said to me that Congress is the fanciest debate club in the world, and I believe that. I believe that those ideas should be debated and fought out in Congress, but with those broad federal policies setting the landscape for the rest of the country, the states are going to take that and say, okay, well, 0.3% Delta-9 THC, what does that mean to us? What do we want it to mean? And so building those states out and building out those state associations and fighting is the most important thing. I know I have some friends that have fought in Louisiana. They filed a lawsuit. I haven't, say it again? I don't know if that's the one. Have you ever heard of Hometown Hero from Texas? They were a part of a lawsuit there. So I think honestly, your best bet is to reach out to some of your suppliers and some of your friends in Louisiana and see if there's an existing group already working the ground, and then go and try to build and organize.
Clay Schechter was the Secretary of State, and now he leads the Hemp Association of Louisiana, but they're not reaching out to the stores or communicating anything, so they're not really
It's funny.
as they should be.
One of the biggest complaints I get about myself and our organization is transparency, right? We try our hardest to be as transparent as possible, but when people aren't paying attention, and then all of a sudden they look over at us and they say, oh, you're not as transparent as you should be. If someone is running a state association in your state and you're not paying attention to them, that's a huge problem. They could be advocating for something that's against your interest, right? So if you're engaged with them, you can participate in the process. And that's why I always advocate that people call me, text me, email me, engage with us directly so that we can give you the up to the moment data and tell you what's happening. You know, I think one of my problems is I'm not a marketing major, I'm not a marketing guy, I'm not a social media famous person, but the advocacy work and the wonkiness of the legislation, that's where I find my home. I really enjoy political strategy, I really enjoy being a part of the process, but when people don't communicate with me or don't communicate with our state leadership, they don't know what's happening. And so they don't know what we're advocating for. We could be advocating for, 5-gram vapes and we want all the crazy stuff. You never know. So you have to actually get engaged. And I would say reach out to them. And if you find that they're advocating for something against your interest, go form a new association. Go find people with like mind and like interests to yours and start advocating for yourself. Dalton.
Like in Texas, there's big decriminalization efforts. Houston, Austin, Dallas, and sometimes the people in the cities just don't even care anymore after weed's legalized in the city. What do you think? And again, in Texas, it's like a state's rights deal. So our attorney general says, "Hey, we have to enforce it," kind of like a sanctuary city thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's against the state law. So, do you think decriminalizing city by city is helpful in this fight? Like obviously, we want to decriminalize in general, but do you think that's helpful at this moment in time?
Absolutely. So city by city decriminalization, I noticed that in Dallas when I was at your event. It's awesome, it's great, but how do they ship the product into the state, right? The interstate commerce is protected by the Farm Bill, the federal Farm Bill. So although I would agree with you that yes, Dallas and Houston and Austin and all these cities decriminalizing is a huge boon, well, if they kill us in the Farm Bill, we're screwed. There goes interstate commerce. And then where are you getting your product from? The black market, right? And so keeping it legal at the federal level is very important. Keeping it legal at the state level is very important because transferring from Dallas to Austin, you get picked up on that major highway that cuts between the two, you're not protected by those cities, right? So obviously I think federal legality on down is very important, but No, I mean, the grassroots and the ground up approach is also very important, right? So I think in Florida, even though we had a hemp bill that would have passed, we had folks from Miami and Tampa saying, oh, the city's not gonna mess with us, we'll be fine. Well, then how are you gonna get your products into the city? You're gonna fly it in via a plane, right? I mean, come on. So I think decriminalization efforts should be lauded and applauded, but we have to be mindful that the state infrastructure, how much resources they're willing to devote to enforcement. Of course, the state trumps the cities. So if they really wanted to, they could come in and kick your doors in regardless of city legality. So, yes, sir.
In your personal opinion, the Farm Bill, how likely is it to screw us over?
Okay, that's the $28.3 billion question. So I've been advocating in DC for about a year and a half now, 2 years. What I have found is at the state level, things move very quickly, right? And you got to be very nimble, very fast. You got to adjust to things very quickly. DC is like trying to sprint in a vat of molasses, right? You sprint to the finish line, you go and you talk to the reps and the senators, and you get some ideas on their plate, and then nothing happens for 6 months, right? It's like a hurry up and wait scenario. Obviously, we had the Mary Miller Amendment. We had the appropriation fight at the end of the year. They tried to take some of that Mary Miller Amendment and put it into the appropriations. That ended up getting killed, thank God. But the Farm Bill got a continuing resolution, a 1-year extension. I think if the Farm Bill is going to move, likely after the first few months of Trump's administration, we're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff. The Doge, the this, the that, all this crazy stuff that's happening actually puts us on the back burner. Right, the Farm Bill is, although it's moving a little bit, it's not really the top issue, right? Whatever's trending on Elon Musk's Twitter is the top issue. So I think over the summer, as RFK Jr. has just gotten announced, the USDA secretary was confirmed a couple of weeks ago, as they kind of settle into their offices, they hang up their pictures, they sit at their desk for the first few times, the USDA secretary, obviously HHS and FDA, they'll start to really look at this and digest it all. And when that happens, I think sometime over the summer, we'll start to see some trickling of some info, and then moving into the fall, it's going to be, I think, a hot fight. I think it's going to be really, really tough. So we got to be prepared for it, and we got to keep looking towards that. But over the next 4 months, the states are all in legislative session. Florida, in fact, of all the states I mentioned, Florida is the only state not in session currently, and Florida goes into session March 4th. So if I go down this list, let's see. We are in session in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, Nebraska, Ohio, Illinois, New Jersey. We're in session basically everywhere. So the fights over the next 60, 90, 120 days at the state level have to take priority. And then from there, obviously, we just have our teams working in DC, and we've found great alignment, I think, with other groups in DC that really, I think, are all moving towards the same idea, trying to carve a path forward for all these small businesses and prevent large corporate interests from just capturing everything and killing all our companies. So that's a great question. Anybody else with a question? Yes, sir.
So we're talking about all these fighting, all this 115,000 emails. We fight for this, we fight for this. Where was everybody for this in Wyoming?
So I find probably the hardest thing I have to deal with on a daily basis is what we'll call brush fires, right? States that I don't currently operate in, or any of the other large hemp organizations don't currently have teams in or people in, all of a sudden a bill pops up. Holy crap, what do? We have to assess where are they at in legislative session, how much money and resources can we allocate, can we go out and find enough people to stand up for themselves in the state? I'll tell you this, I wear a Congress pin, right? It's American flag with the United States Capitol on it. When I fly into a state that I'm not from, and I say, hey, I'm from Florida, and we've got all this experience in these other states, they look at me like Johnny come lately. Oh, you're the guy from DC. Oh, you're just this advocate, and you're this big corporate interest guy. We don't care what you think. This is our state. What resonates with state legislators more than anything is their local constituents. And that's why building and finding local interest groups that are aligned, whether it's retail, distribution, manufacturing, finding people in your state that everyone agrees on some basic sets of principles, getting them together in a group, forming a nonprofit, forming an association, and going to your state capital and advocating for yourself is the most important thing you can do. When Wyoming and South Dakota and Iowa happened, we have to reach out to, our superpower, I guess, is our direct access to some of the largest manufacturers in the country. I have to go to those folks and say, hey, who do you sell to in Wyoming? And if I go to 5 or 10 brands and they say, we don't sell to anyone in Wyoming, oh crap, what do? I go to Google Maps, right? And I search retail stores and I call retail stores, I get an employee and the employee says, yeah, we'll tell our boss. And we never make it to the decision makers and we never get a chance to actually build that organization. And that's actually exactly what happened in Wyoming and South Dakota. We reached out to people and said, hey, who do you have there? Do you have any big companies? Do you have any people we can reach out to that'll stand up for themselves? And everyone we talked to said no.
Because I pulled everybody together, but it was last minute. I mean, I was new to the game. I'm 8 months old. I don't know anything about politics.
Yeah.
But I still managed to pull this off. So is there any way, I think we're about a month and a half away from our court date. And I don't know if there's any way we can pull something together for our peers to help our lawyers.
So you're a month and a half away from a court date, and you need financial support, help with your attorneys.
None of our attorneys, our lobbyists, we're not experienced in any of this.
Sure.
So the only reason all this started, I started calling on the stores to pull us together so we form a Wyoming hemp community. But none of us know how to run a nonprofit. None of us know. I mean, I run a drug detection guy.
So,
Going into this.
well, I'll tell you this. Some people say I get spread too thin, but I'm always willing to help. If you call me and you say, hey, I want to form an association, I got 5 people, we all got companies, we want to work together to fight back, I will absolutely sit down with you and help you form the nonprofit, get some social media accounts up and running, organize yourselves, and start messaging to other businesses in the state. That's what I do. That's my day job. Now, specifically for your court date, I'm going to tell you to reach out to a few different attorneys, Rod Kite, Philip Snow, Justin Swanson. Reach out to some of these cannabis experts and see if they'll donate some of their time or see what their hourly rate is and get them to support your attorneys locally.
Yeah, we have Philip Snow, but I'm sure if we can meet court date or not.
Got it. Yeah. That's, they've dubbed the term cannabis lawyers, cannabis attorneys, right? For a very specific reason, because this is.
On the show last year, there would have been time to say this.
Yeah, yep. I think that's probably the hardest part of my job, again, as marketing, I'm not a marketing guy, is getting more people to recognize that we exist. That, hey, there are people you can call. If political stuff happens and you need help, there are people you can call. So it's really cool to see you here, even though you're fighting a battle in your state. No kidding. Drew, Dalton again?
Why do you think North Carolina's the best state to operate in again?
So honestly, 2 reasons. The majority leader in the House in North Carolina has a hemp company. So the Republican majority leader in the House of Representatives at the state level in North Carolina has a hemp company. So that's a huge deal, right? First and foremost. The guy was majority leader for a reason. Lots of people like him. He's clearly a good leader. And also, he happens to be probably the best lobbyist money can't buy, right? So that's one reason. The second reason, honestly, is that the folks on the ground in North Carolina, the leadership of our state association, Lee Vantine and Lee Vantine Sr. from Canna Aid and Apotheca, have organized probably the best state-level association in the country. And I'm gonna say they probably trump me in Florida, right? Honestly, they're very well organized. They do a very good job of getting consistent monthly funding in the door. They do great messaging, and they're nimble. If something happens, they respond to it immediately, which is very rare at the state level. A lot of folks, kind of have a tough time responding quickly. They're not very confident. They need other people to help support them in their language and how they respond to certain questions and different issues, but not in North Carolina. They're very well put together. So those are the 2 big reasons. Anybody else? Drew.
So we're talking about defending states and preventing things from flipping over. Is there any opportunity in the future to take a look at places like Oregon or California that have bad, poorly written regulations on the books and revise them? Or get something really good?
So, excuse me. The only state where I ever feel like I really lost, like I really got beat up, was Virginia. Virginia has a long session one year and a short session the following year, and it alternates, right? So in the long session, right after Governor Glenn Youngkin won his election, we got a 40-0 vote in the Senate to kill the underlying bill and the governor's recommended amendments. So all Democrats and all Republicans voted to kill that hemp ban bill in that year. I think it was 2022 or 2023. The following year was a short session, 30 days. We proposed our bill. It was a good hemp regulatory bill. By the second week, we felt a sea change. We felt momentum stop. It was like hitting a brick wall. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Our bill dies effectively, doesn't get a committee assignment. A ban bill gets presented in week 2. By the end of week 3, it had passed out of all relevant committees. Week 4, it passed the House and the Senate. Boom, we lost. Found out after the fact that Youngkin and many of his secretaries, many of his commissioners, et cetera, had lobbied to kill the hemp industry. Very simple. They felt like it was a bad thing for their local communities, and so they kicked our ass, to be clear. Looking at Virginia, while Governor Glenn Youngkin is still in control and still in power, you've got someone who has made this a priority, but he's coming out of office. I think 2027, I think they have the odd year elections. I think he's out of office in 2027. And so setting the groundwork and setting up an association to start the ball rolling in that direction and waiting for the current leadership to leave. Thank God for single-term governors in Virginia. Waiting for him to leave and working towards our goal in 2027 and 2028, I think there's hope to get that back. Now, the same thing could also be true in Oregon or in California, but again, you have to set up the infrastructure now, and you have to start working with the people who are likely going to run for governor or likely going to be in the race for Speaker of the House or President of the Senate, and start working with those folks and see if you can get that change 18 months from now, 24 months from now. It is much more difficult, I will say, it is much more difficult to get a positive bill in your direction passed than it is to kill a bill that is trying to kill you. I think there's kind of common sense in politics. It's much easier to kill a bill. The United States is designed, their legislative process is designed to debate ideas and kill bad ideas. So it's much easier to kill a bad bill than it is to pass a good one. So I think just setting up infrastructure and making sure you're working towards that is probably ideal. So anybody else? Yes, sir.
So back to Wyoming stuff, right, this has been a lot. So when we lose this, Wyoming's, know what I know now, because when we started this thing, nothing. But know what I know now, it would have been an easy fight. I mean, there's no people. So it's easy to talk about things. Advocacy groups push nicotine is easy. If we lose this court date now, you can help me get set up so I can know how to fight. We set up bills for next year.
Correct. So 3 co-equal branches of government. I always view legal strategies, lawsuits, as godly the last thing you ever want to do. Because if you're there, you've already lost, right? But if you lose, you've got a long road ahead and you've got to work hard for it. You have to engage. And I know engaging in politics may seem boring or may seem like you're climbing, Mount Everest and you're never going to get to the top. But I'll tell you, in my experience, I'm a relatively young guy. When I first got into politics in 2017, I was 25, 26. I had dumped my life savings into my business, and the state was threatening to take it away from me. And I thought to myself, no matter how small I am, if I fight hard enough, I believe in the American way of life and the American freedoms that we're all given. And I fought back, and in 2017, 2018, 2019, and saved again by a veto from Governor DeSantis in 2020, we won. Governor DeSantis' vape veto in 2020 led to a domino effect around the United States that caused Juul to lose $40 billion in market valuation. We stopped them dead in their tracks from banning all of their small business competition. And every single large corporate interest that was involved in inflating that stock price and boosting up Juul, all of them fell by the wayside. They're now worth, I think, $1.5 billion on the open market when they were worth $44 billion. They went from 5,000 employees to a few hundred. The political process in the United States is designed to protect the people, whether you believe it or not. If you stand up and you fight, you can win. I promise you. In the veto fight in Florida, you know, I knew that we were going to lose the last few weeks. I kind of sensed it. And going to Governor DeSantis is scary, right? This guy is the most popular Republican governor in the United States. He is very powerful. He's a populist. Going to him and saying, hey, please let us continue selling our drugs, it's not easy, right? It's not easy. It's very scary. I had some very, very tough conversations. I had some really, really tough debates, but thank God I had years of experience and I was able to work through those debates effectively and not be afraid to do it. You know, I think a lot of the political process, people, they get incensed and emotional and they think, I'm just gonna scream at them and tell them how evil they are and how bad they are and the Illuminati and all this crazy conspiracy stuff. But I find that if you actually just work the process and you remain respectful and you remain professional and you understand that the people that are sitting in those positions of power find way more backlash than you ever will in your daily life. Those people are spoken to and talked down to and screamed at and have their families and their lives threatened every fucking day. If you go to them calmly with facts, science, the truth, and your passion, you can win. I'm telling you. So if you lose your court case, which I hope you don't, I'm gonna knock on some wood for you. If you don't lose, there's still gonna be another fight. They're gonna come back at you next year. But if you do lose, I think you gotta step up now and start laying the groundwork. Show what you do. One of the things we did in the veto fight in Florida, we promoted a video. There's a group of traveling mothers with cancer. We found them. They had come to the Capitol one time and they said, we love hemp, we use it for our cancer treatments. We promoted a video with them directly to the governor's office. Right after some back and forth communication, we found some people that were willing to engage with us from the governor's office. And we showed them that hemp was helping these mothers who had stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And they have this retreat. They do it in Key West every year. They fly in, there's 5 or 10 of them, and they all just kind of sit around, tell their stories, talk about their lives, their kids, et cetera. And they talk about how cannabis and hemp helped them. And so we went down there and we sent a videographer down and we interviewed all of them and we found some really, really great content that we were able to show the governor's office and really kind of turn the tide against the negative rhetoric that we've been hearing. I think one thing that large corporations do a good job of is they tell you how great they are. They tell you how great their process is. Well, we test our products and we have better testing and we have better this and we have better that. Yeah, but what do your consumers think? What do your consumers do with your product at the end of the day, right? We find that in Virginia, we did an updated economic impact report after that ban bill passed. The updated economic impact report showed that within 1 month of that bill passing, 68% of all the hemp operators in the state went out of business or moved out of the state in that first month. Within 6 months, the entire industry was gone. Now, there was a report that came out about 6 months ago that shows 4 out of 5 people in Virginia do not get their cannabis from a dispensary. They get it from the black market or they ship it in from online retailers, right? So, although public policy, I think, is clunky and it can be a little, can make some mistakes along the way, generally speaking, meeting the consumer where they are and considering the consumer first and the smallest businesses first is what leads to the best outcomes. So again, your voice as a small retailer in a small state is more powerful than you think that it is. If you went and you said, hey, listen, I've got an 85-year-old Vietnam veteran, he comes into my store every week and he buys this much hemp from me and it helps him with his PTSD. And we've got this mother with cancer and man, that CBD really helped her inflammation during her cancer fight. Like, if you go and tell those stories and those politicians hear it, they might be hearing it for the first time. I think one thing that this industry honestly does a bad job of is not realizing that we all live in an echo chamber. This is a room full of my friends. It's a room full of people that I love, right? So I'm communicating inside of an echo chamber right now. It's not us that matters. It's the people outside of this room that matter. It's the people that we've never talked to that matter. I was in my hotel last night and I saw a group of, Fortune 500 businessmen in their fancy suits and probably 50 of them were walking by and I said, not a single one of them is allowed to smoke weed because of their corporate jobs, right? And so if I went and talked to them about cannabis, hemp, all the intricacies, they would just brush me aside, right? So a lot of politicians, we have to remember, are the same way, right? They come from corporate jobs, they come from, a different background. Many of them have strong religious values and they've never used it. And so they don't know your life experience. So just simply going and talking to them makes a huge difference. Yeah, oh, that happens every time. And that's one of my favorite things. When a bad piece of legislation passes, and you can go to them a week later, like, oh, I didn't know, oh my God, holy crap, I had no idea. That's one of my, I say it's one of my favorite things, it's really sad, but no, I think many legislators, they get caught up in the fervor. You do have a two-party system, you do have a majority group think, right? And so something that's moving, they're not subject matter experts. They hear from someone that it's a good bill, it's a good thing, we got to really clamp down on these hemp guys, and then it passes, and then someone from their local district says, oh my God, what just happened? And then they realize it and it's too late. So that's why being a part of the process in real time is so important to prevent that from happening. So, John?
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to just echo those comments. That's something I hear a lot in Arizona from legislators, is just the appreciation of coming out to tell them your side of the story.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it's easy for us to, I think, fault people for doing the wrong thing. But when you're a legislator, you need to be an expert on education policy, tax policy, transportation policy, and it's just impossible to be that. And so they need to hear the other side of the story and have trusted people that they can rely on. And so that really just spoke to me, and I wanted to.
One of my favorite statistics is that the average legislator in the United States deals with over 3,000 issues a year. That is an unbelievable number. That is 10 issues a day. That's what kind of roofing tile can you use? How much chlorine can you put in your swimming pool? What level of pesticides can you use in your average suburban lawn, right? Like all these different issues that we're not dealing with. We have one issue, we have two issues, three issues, whatever. We're only dealing with our own individual issues. These people are literally elected to look at everything, right? We decide, the people, we decide that they're probably the best decision makers, best problem solvers. Go to DC and solve our lives' problems, right? Well, when they're dealing with 3,000 issues, if you're not in that room, right? One of my favorite quotes, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So, saw you raise your hand.
Just an observation is, I would suggest that the hemp people look at your customers, figure out what your average age is, because these products have become mainstream.
Oh yeah.
And I think you can use this to your advantage, is that when Granny is now using these gummies, you take Granny's gummies away, Granny's going to be pissed.
Yep.
Granny's going to talk. Granny votes every time.
So I've got a great story on that. So I often will speak negatively of the bill that passed in Minnesota. And there's a great bill in Minnesota. I think it was well intentioned, but it limited milligrams to 5 milligrams per serving. This passed 2 years ago. Now the drink market will tout it as probably the best bill that ever passed. 5 milligrams, oh my God, look at our sales, 137 million. Every single smoke shop and every single vape shop and every single tobacco store in Minnesota still sells every other product category, right? But the drink guys will try to pull the wool over your eyes and say, oh, well, look at how much sales we've done. Yeah, well, think about all the other stores that are doing 4 times that amount of sales in all the other product categories. That's my fear with the 3-tiered system, is if we give them the drinks, right, and maybe we give them everything. If we give them everything and put it in the 3-tiered system, they don't care about vapes. They don't care about gummies. They don't care about flour. Maybe they're scared of flour, right? And so what happens, they deprioritize it. They promote drinks. Well, then I spoke to a legislator. Now, again, this is 4 months ago. So this is 18 months after the bill passed. Spoke to a legislator in Minnesota. She said, I use these products, and a 5 milligram drink is not enough. I now have to drink 10 of them to feel anything, right? And so she herself, as a legislator, goes elsewhere to buy her products. And so being mindful of titration, what's the term? Your tolerance, right? Being mindful of that and understanding that not everyone is going to be, 5 milligrams is going to be suitable for, right? Some people need 100, some people need 500. My girlfriend who has epilepsy needs 1,000 some days, right? How are you going to get someone 1,000 milligrams at 5 milligrams a serving? You gonna give her a giant bag of popcorn? I mean, come on, So we have to be mindful of these things and think about this. And I think you're right, the consumer, we say it's mainstream. I have a friend of mine, he owns several retail stores. He says his customer base is between 40 and 80. They are mainstream, right? Their number one selling product is flour. I mean, come on. I think the fallacy that drinks or gummies or vapes or only one mode of ingestion is right for everyone is just wildly inaccurate. So it's surveying your consumers. One of the things we do, obviously we do these economic impact reports, but one of the things that we've done in the past is survey the consumer. hey, what category do you use the most of? Do you use vapes, gummies, whatever? And we show those to legislators. Like, oh, I had no idea. 30% of the market is a pre-roll, right? So, yeah, we're getting close to the end. We got 6 minutes left. Anybody got another question? Anybody? Anybody? Cool. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. Seriously. It was awesome. Thank you. I don't deserve your applause, but I appreciate it all the same. Thank you.
You're too humble, JD.
Try to fight. Just try to win, you know? Awesome.